When you start out free motion quilting and you have your sandwich under your needle, the one thing that is very easy to forget is putting your foot down, because it hovers and it's just an easy thing to do. And then you end up with that nasty mess of thread underneath, like in one of the pictures in the video in the last lesson. So that's number one, put your foot down. Number two, lower your feed dogs. Number three, set your stitch length at 0. That saves wear and tear on the machine. Now, when you're ready to start out, you want to bring the bobbin thread up to the top. If you don't, you stand a chance of having a garbled up mess of thread on the back side of your quilt. So we're going to lower the needle, bring the needle back up, lift up your foot, and now you can just pull that bobbin thread right to the top, like that. Now you know you're not going to have a mess underneath. Then you lower your foot so that it'll hit that same place where you just brought the thread up. Now it's said that in free motion quilting there are just a few different types of stitches. One of them is, let's move down here so I have a little bit more room. One of them is a curve or an arc. There you go. The other is what's called an S-curve, which is sort of like an arc, but it changes directions, like an S. The other is a straight line. The other is a loop. And last but not least, we have what's called a hook. So those are your basic shapes in free motion quilting. And these are the shapes that we're going to concentrate on in this series of lessons. We're going to work on different shapes, varieties of the shapes. We're going to learn how to do the shape from left to right, like you would normally write. And then we're going to learn how to do them from right to left. Sometimes we're going to learn to do them from the bottom up and the top down. And why are we doing that? It's so you don't have to keep constantly turning your quilt around. Now, if you have a little piece like this, it's not such a big deal. But if you had a big king-size quilt under there, you sure wouldn't want to have to keep turning it around. So by learning how to do these stitches in various conglomerations, we're going to put different things together with them, and learning how to do it from different angles, that'll save you all that turning and tugging down the road. Eventually, my goal for you is to be able to do these stitches on a blank piece of fabric, just like this. That's my goal. But for now, what we're going to do is we're going to mark off your quilt sandwich. So you have a little bit of a guideline to go by. So what I've done is I've taken my quilt sandwich and I've drawn parallel lines. And I've left a couple inches at the top just because it's too hard to quilt right at the edge of your piece. But I've drawn these lines 1.25 inches apart. Now you can make them wider or you can make them narrower, but that's about the size of your muscle memory sheets. So it's in keeping with what you've been doing so far. Now, again, we're going to start out. Let's pull that thread up. And don't try to start right on the very edge because, again, it's just too hard to quilt when you're on the very edge of your fabric. That's why you always leave extra around your quilt. You have to have somewhere for your hands to grab hold of. When you start out and you got your bobbin thread pulled to the top, you've got everything set, your feed dogs are down, your stitch length is at 0, you have your Supreme slider on there, you've got your gloves on. Now, the next thing and the biggest piece of advice I can offer is do not watch your needle. You want to instead watch where you're going to. And in this case, we're going to the top of this line. That's where our eyes should be focused. And when we hit here, we're going to come down to the bottom of the line. So when we start here, our focus should be here. When we end up here, our focus should be back down here. Okay? So let's get started and just take your time. There's no rush. So we're going to do a gentle curve up, keeping your eye on that top line. And now come back down, keeping your eye on the bottom line. That wasn't so bad, was it? Let's try it again. Okay, we're going to keep your eye on the top line. Come back down and hit the bottom line. Let's do it again. Top line. Now look at the bottom line. Now one of the good things about watching where you're going to is, let's say this was a border you were working on. This way you're ensuring that you're staying within that border that you've got set for yourself. You're not going out of the seam line. So let's continue on. And back down to the bottom. Back up to the top. And just keep your curve just gentle. What you don't want to do is to do this nice gentle curve up like so, and then just sort of come down like that. That looks like an incline at a roller coaster. You want to have a nice gentle curve instead. So work on these curves. Like I said, we're not going to start out with putting any pressure on you by putting this on a finished sampler. Right now I just want you to concentrate on the moves, getting your curves as smooth as you can without any jagged lines, and you can accomplish that by watching where you're going to and coming back down. Now I want to try one more experiment. I'm going to actually close my eyes and stitch. Now it was a smaller curve, no doubt, but look how smooth it is. It's because I had nothing to interfere with my stitching. All I had was just the movement. Now I'm not recommending that you try that because I will not be held responsible for anybody stitching over their fingers. I just did that to prove a point. If you just focus on what you're doing, and that's the beauty of free motion quilting, you just forget about everything else. So keep up with that and we'll come back and do the next stitch. Okay, you've mastered that curve or the arc. So let's do it again. And let's stitch over to the other side. And now that we've got this mastered, I think we could even increase the speed a little bit. If you feel comfortable. If not, keep your speed down. Some people find that they get smoother stitches if they increase their speed. Other people find that they have a hard time working with their stitch length when their speed is too fast. You find the speed that you're comfortable with and stay with it. There is no right or wrong. So now we're at the end of the row. We've done the curves just like we did before. Now I'm going to take a couple steps in until we're just in the middle of this curve. And remember how I said you're going to learn how to sew from right to left, left to right, up and down. Well, this is where we're going from right to left. So we're going to do the same thing. We're going to start here. We're going to focus here and end up in the middle of this next curve. So here we go. And I'll slow it down. And here we go. We're going to hit that curve right where the two intersect and come back down in the middle of the next one. Let's try it again. Again, my eyes are focused here. Now, if you have your machine in needle down position, you can actually rest there because now you want to focus down here. Now we'll continue on with that until we get to the end of the row. Now you've learned how to stitch this stitch from left to right and from right to left. And you were able to do that without having to turn your quilt around. Now that would make for a nice narrow border stitch. Or also something that you could put in your sashing. So go ahead and practice that a little bit more. I'm going to draw some more lines and be back. This next stitch is called Eggs and Dart, and it's basically the same thing that we have been doing, except we're going to elongate the scallop a little bit more. Right now we've been making kind of plump little scallops or arcs. Now we're going to elongate it, and let me show you what I mean. Again, we're still going to concentrate on going up at the top, but we're going to stretch this arc out a little bit. Like that. And we're going to do that across the line. And again, I've drawn these lines another 1.25 inches apart. Now you could make cheater marks on your line if you wanted to measure out each one of these so they would be exact. But the the beauty of free motion quilting is you don't have to do that many marks. You can just stitch. Now these marks that we see on here that I've done would not really be marks on your quilt. They would be seam lines. And let's go and try to squeeze one more in here. Okay, so we've got those elongated arcs done. Now we're going to stitch straight up. And now we're going to do the elongated arcs upside down. And we're going to come down to here, meet up here, like so. We're going to come down to the middle of the arc and work our way back up. We'll come down to the middle of the arc and work our way back up. And when you're working your way back up, you kind of want these points to be parallel to each other. Work your way back down. Back up. Back down. Back up. And last but not least, and now you have what's called the eggs and darts. Not any harder than we did up here, just stretched out a little bit. Okay, the final one for this lesson, again, we're still concentrating on arcs, is going to be the snowball. So this time you want to draw your lines, but you don't want any spacing between them. So I have 1 1/4 and 1 1/4, and I'll show you why in a minute. Okay, so once again, you should be really good at doing these curves. So let's do some more. And we're back to the nice full curves. Sort of a semicircle is what we're looking for. Are your curves starting to smooth out for you now that you're getting used to doing them? Not quite as jaggedy as they were. If you still have trouble with jagged edges, just keep repeating this lesson until you can start to do these curves so they're nice and smooth. Okay, we've got this first row of curves going. Now we're going to come back the other way, but we're going to do them upside down, just like we did up here for the eggs and darts. But instead of meeting in the center, we're going to touch that point. So now you really have to concentrate on where your eyes are going to be. So here we go. Come down around, go back up, and meet at the point. Come down around. Eyes on that point. Down around. Eyes on the point. Down around. Again, eyes on the point. So now we have snowballs. Some of them are a little egg-shaped because we didn't make them quite as full and rounded as we wanted to. But nonetheless, we have snowballs. So go ahead and practice these 4 designs for this week's lesson. As we build on these lessons, these curves will join in with the S curves and other things until you start to form some really incredible designs with them. But you need to get the basic fundamentals down first. So that's what we're doing with this lesson. So until next time, when we learn even more about free motion quilting shapes, keep practicing, keep your stitches smooth, and I'll see you then. Oh, and don't forget to post what you're working on so everybody can see what the class is doing. That makes it a lot of fun.